My name's Max and I'm an alcoholic. I was told to say the first thing that came to mind this morning, and that was shit. How did I get here? And then I just wanted to throw up. But yeah, I'm here to share my experience, strength, and hope with a newcomer. And it's not about me today, it's about helping others. So yeah, I guess I'll start from the beginning. I came from a very well-to-do family. I was supported by my mom and dad emotionally, financially, physically. You know, I was given everything that I wanted and needed. My mom came from a well-to-do family as well. My dad, he came from government buildings. And yeah, I built up a beautiful life. Where my childhood was, and it was a beautiful childhood. I had my two half-brothers that came from my dad's previous marriage, Ross and Scott, and I have very fond memories of us growing up together. Our lives were filled with, fairy gardens and doozies and soccer, and it was an amazing experience. My first memory of using, which my mom actually reminded me of when I first got into treatment, was I was about 6 or 7 years old and I was sick. I had flu or something like that, and I had cough medicine. And it was next to my bed. My mom left it there, and I would down this whole bottle of cough medicine and then hide it behind my bed or behind my bedside table. And she saw that it was finished, and she just thought that, we finished it, and she would buy another one, and then I would have that one again. So that was my first memory of it, and, nothing stuck out for me at that point. Like, I liked how it made me feel, but, I was sick, so nobody liked having flu. But yeah, from then, my next memory that I can, really stands out for me is when my grandfather died in 2005. That's when I figured out my next fix, and that was cutting myself. I didn't know how to deal with, death. He was the first person to die in my family, and we were really close. So that was about when I was 12 years old, and I started cutting myself then on my wrists and on my thighs and my stomach. And they were just surface cuts, but it made me, it was relief for me, and it was the only way that I knew how to deal with this stuff, and I didn't want to speak to my parents about it, and I didn't really speak to my parents about anything, really. Memories in school, I got teased a lot. I'm a ginger, so I have freckles. I had an umbilical hernia, which my belly button used to stick out, and I got teased a lot, and I was a very, very angry child about that. Often when my mom used to try to discipline me, I would fight back. I would punch and kick and swear at her. I was a spoiled brat, and sometimes still am now. But yeah, eventually she gave up on disciplining me and bought me a punching bag, and that was my go-to. But yeah, eventually, I was sick and tired of getting bullied and teased at school, so I started fighting back. And one day a girl, she was teasing me, and I punched her in the face in grade 3. And I ended up going to big girl detention and not little girl detention. And that was my first time kind of dealing with the consequences. Thereafter, my mom always used to get me out of detention and pick me up early and tell the school that they have no right to discipline me. So, yeah. Moving on. In grade 9, I changed schools. It was really difficult. It was my first time going to a co-ed school, and I didn't really, know how to interact with guys. And I had my brothers and their friends, but meeting new people at a new school, and it was a really small and weird school, and it was not really as strict as the school that I went to before, which was a staunch Catholic school. Backtracking then, when I was kind of having Catholic school in me, and my dad was Catholic, but at home religion was never forced on me. And yeah, like going to Catholic school and having like religion like kind of forced on you the whole time was just like, yeah, I'm fine, actually, don't want this. And yeah, I grew a huge hate, especially after family members dying. In my family, I always blamed God and then kind of just left it at that. I didn't really have a belief then. So yeah, where was I again? Yes, so my new school and boys. Yeah, so when I kind of got, used to the guys, like I kind of like saw like, okay, like this is how other girls interact with the guys, and like I've never really interacted with guys like that before. And yeah, like a lot of my friends, their parents weren't as strict as mine, so they would get to go to house parties and clubs and all of that, and I really wanted to go. I thought that there was something there. So yeah, like the first time that my parents really let me out, I ended up meeting this guy. His name was Rudy, and I was about 15 or 14 and he was 25, and we became boyfriend and girlfriend. And yeah, like I hid it for a really long time with my parents, and looking back now, I think every single relationship that I've ever been in was dishonest. It started off dishonestly. I always hid it from my parents. I never went in with like who I actually am as a person. I always hid behind this mask of being like really confident and fearless, but I'm really just scared all the time. But yeah, so eventually my parents found out about that relationship and they ended up grounding me for like 9 months. And through that, it was like July holidays when that started. So my dad phoned up this music store where I was learning guitar and said, please can Max come and like work there? We want her to stay out of trouble, and we'll pay her to work there. So my parents really didn't want me around. They were really upset. And yeah, like there I found, my love for music and my love for playing instruments, but I also found like a little family, and the manager there, his name's John, and he's like my second dad today. He really tried to, push in my head what I'm putting my parents through with my behavior at home. And I always kind of listened, but never really got it, and didn't really care either how my parents felt. So I just kind of kept on doing what I was doing and hurting people. Yeah, so with working at the music store, I started doing gigs at Zach's, playing guitar there, and I started drinking. Like every Thursday morning when I got to school, I'd definitely be hungover. And I found something that, when I went onto stage and my parents were watching and I was like, having beer like around the corner, I felt confident like on stage, like I felt like this is okay, like I feel okay now. And that's when I realized like this is taking away my fear, like taking away those insecurities. And yeah, I felt more confident. And yeah, just like high school was just parties and the Winston mostly. And yeah, like that's when I started experimenting with drugs. I hadn't found the drug of my choice yet, but yeah, it took me a while. And yeah, through the years, like in high school, I like just constantly got into relationships, and that's, still, that was like a big fix for me as well, because I felt okay. After the relationship with Rudy, I started dating one of the high school teachers. He taught accounting there, and he was 36. And yeah, obviously fell in love. In love. And yeah, it was like ridiculous. Going into his classroom, and how ironic, we're in a classroom right now. So yeah, and eventually rumors started spreading, like a lot of friends saw us together and I tried to hide it away. I told one friend and yeah, it just spread like wildfire. And eventually it came to the point where there was a disciplinary hearing and he got fired, but everything was okay with me because I was being raped by him, and I came off as the victim, so I played that card very well. Not even 2 weeks later, I found a new boyfriend. He was 50 and he was a criminal, well, he is a criminal lawyer. And yeah, I met him through the music store, and I was like about 17 then. So yeah, I also had that one from my parents. And yeah, like looking back now, like, I'm not ashamed of it now, but when I got into treatment, I didn't really have a lot of self-respect for myself or self-love. But yeah, that's part of my story, and I know, for a lot of girls out there, like, relationships are a fix, and my biggest one was like also like just playing that game of manipulation and just getting anything out of men, really, mostly like money and all of that. So high school finished. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wanted to study fine arts. My parents didn't allow me, so I decided on studying hospitality management at the International Hotel School. And I thought, like, okay, well, at least I can travel and get away from my family because I hate them for absolutely no reason. And yeah, like through those years also, like I lost contact with my brothers. They went to boarding school. And yeah, we just kind of drifted apart. But yeah, hospitality school, I did my practicals at the Oyster Box Hotel, and I decided to do my kitchen practicals first because I thought that I would hate the kitchen. And it turned out that I absolutely loved it. I loved the rush and the swearing and the absolute chaos. And I loved the thing about like food and like the art of it, and yeah, like I really fell in love with it. And of course, we work really long hours, so I also loved after shift, where we went to, bars and drank and ended up coming home at like 4 o'clock in the morning and waking up and doing shift at 8. And that was my life for like 3 years, just those long shifts and drinking, and my disease progressed quite fast. And my relationships with my family disappeared as well. Most of the time when I would get home or had off days, I would either isolate or just keep on drinking and using. Sorry, I'm getting really nervous now. So just before I finished hotel school, I got a position as sous chef at Harvey's restaurant, and I was really proud of myself because I worked, when I wasn't using and drinking, I worked really hard to get to where I was, and my parents were proud of me, and I saw that, and I was getting that affirmation from them, and I just wanted to continue building myself up, but every time that I built myself up, I'd screw up somehow. Over the years, my parents kicked me out like a good 10 times, and I'd end up at family or friends' houses. And it was because of my behavior and how I treated my parents, And yeah, eventually, when I first started working at Harvey's, out of hotel school, I started dating this guy, Chris. He was actually younger than me. And yeah, we moved in together, and it was an absolute mess. Just the relationship as a whole. I wasn't exactly the nicest person. I was physically and emotionally abusive. I neglected him a lot. And yeah, we used together. And yeah, it was quite during that relationship, my dad actually died. That was about 3 years ago. And that was one of the most painful days of my life. I was working morning shift and, and yeah, he came into the kitchen and said he needed to take me home, and I was like, I didn't know what was going on. And yeah, on the freeway, I was kicking and screaming. I wanted to know what was going on. My mom wasn't answering her phone. My aunt wasn't answering her phone. And that morning when I was actually driving down to the restaurants, I was looking at the sea and I saw how beautiful it was. And my dad, he surf skied. And I just thought to myself, my dad's probably surf skiing right now. And yeah, so I got home and my mom eventually told me, and I lost my shit completely, trying to get a hold of my brothers. And I wasn't exactly graceful on that day either. I was screaming down the road because my brother's mom, they lived down the road from us. Yeah, and I was actually telling Jenna yesterday how selfish I am on that day. My whole life I was kind of hiding stuff from my parents, and I told my mom that day of my tattoos, which she would have skinned me alive about, and my piercings. So yeah, I'm very selfish. Anyway, so yeah, that week was tough, and I started neglecting my mom even more. I pushed her away a lot. I didn't care about how she felt or who she had just lost. I totally forgot that she just lost her husband, and it was all about me. I lost my dad. And yeah, I stayed with her that week, and the whole week I just drank, and I always said no, but I'm drinking dad's favorite drink, and justifying it very well. And yeah, what was brought to light was that I didn't even ask when my mom was burying my dad's ashes. So yeah, I wasn't there for that. Sorry. Anyway, so after that I ended up going to my first psychiatric ward, and obviously, medication became a big part afterwards, and I was put onto a lot of medication, and I found my solution yet again. Just before I went in, I had no idea what was going on with me. I was using a lot, and I think I was, now that I look back into it, back at it, I think I was slipping slightly into psychosis because I was going absolutely bonkers. I didn't know what was going on with me. And I phoned my mom. She ended up, taking me to hospital. I was sedated for 36 hours and then taken into the psychiatric ward. And yeah, I stayed there for 2 months. The boyfriend that I was dating at the time, he visited me twice. He was on tour with his band in Cape Town. And yeah, kind of brought to light a lot of stuff about that relationship then. And he ended up cheating on me whilst I was in the psychiatric ward. And I found that out on a night that I spent back at home. And yeah, that morning when I found out about it, I went absolutely crazy. I broke guitars and broke coffee tables and started cutting myself in front of him. I was absolutely dramatic. And yeah, he ended up driving me back to the psychiatric ward, and I stayed there for another month. And yeah, I eventually moved back home. And my mom and I, we never got along. We always fought, and my dad was always the mediator, so going back home and living with my mom was quite tough. And yeah, I would still do a lot of things behind her back. She knew that I was smoking weed. And so awkward. And yeah, the one night I came home stoned, and I literally stayed there for like a good 4 days, and she kicked me out again. And over the next 2 months, I stayed with a lady that I met in the psychiatric ward, who was also going through a divorce. So I went to a very safe and happy environment. And then I ended up going to my great uncle's house, and he eventually got sick and tired of me. And through that journey, like I found my drug of choice, and yeah, it's progressed very fast, my using with that. I just started using pretty much every day. And yeah, at that point, I just started working with my old boss from Harvey's, and he opened up a catering business. And yeah, I just got back into chefing. Whilst I was at the psychiatric ward, I resigned, but yeah, then he opened up the catering business. And the hours were a lot more chilled, and it gave me a lot more time to screw around. And yeah, that's at that time when I had moved into my own place after my uncle kicked me out. It gave me a very good reason as to, spend all my money on whatever the hell I wanted. And eventually, my salary would last about like 4 days, and then poof. So that's when I kind of learned my skill of manipulating men and, selling my body to get my drug of choice. And yeah, that came a lifestyle for me. And I was also dating people on the side. A bit later on, I started dating my head chef. And I dated a lot of people that I worked with, which, yeah. So yeah, I started dating my head chef, and that just became an absolute mess. It was a very, very toxic relationship, and I was still in a relationship with another guy before that, and also in a relationship with one of my housemates. So, yeah. And yeah, with their relationship, I enabled him to use with me. He hadn't used for about 8 years, but was still drinking, whatever. But yeah, he had just broken things up with his fiance, so I just thought oh, here's a solution. Let me share this with you, and then proceeded to manipulate him into using with me and buying the stuff. So yeah, that went downhill very quickly, and work at that point was really bad. Most of the time I was falling over where I was, falling asleep where I was working. I was so disorganized with functions, and most of the time, not all the time, but functions were put into my hands that I had to, manage with over 100 or 200 people for weddings and other events. So I wasn't exactly reliable. And during that course, my boss also wanted me to house sit for him when he went away, and I was babysitting his dog, and he has a beautiful apartment on the beachfront, a penthouse, and I invited all my friends over, and I said, no, it'll be fine, and it just caused absolute drama in his house, and yeah, I was so disrespectful to a man that had given me so many chances. Every time that I screwed up, he would say, okay, well, we'll try again. And yeah, even today, I still have a lot of love for him. He's a very good friend of mine now. So yeah, the one night, the head chef, Tyler, and I, we were out, and it was actually my last night of using, and that night he proposed to me. At Dropkick Murphys, how romantic. And and we got home eventually, and I was so sick and tired of seeing, doing the same thing over and over, going to the bars, after work, using, coming home, using more. And it was just like the same monotonous thing over and over again. And like, I don't want to say that like I really wanted to stop using, because I didn't. I just wanted less of it, quite honestly. You know, my solution then was to cut still, and yeah, that's what I did that night. In front of Tyler, I slit my wrist and cut through all my tendons, and I really thought that I was going to be okay. Like, he didn't need to take me to hospital or anything, but like my tendons were hanging out my arm. So, and I fought him for like quite a while. Like, you're not taking me to hospital, you're not phoning my mom, you're not phoning the ambulance, nothing. And eventually, like, I actually looked down and I was like, okay, well, fuck, I need to go. So, being the unmanageable alcoholic that I am, and that Tyler was as well, I had to reverse my automatic car, because he can't drive an automatic. Reverse my car out with, you know, my half like hanging arm, and get his car to come out, and then park my car in the garage, and off we went to the hospital. And yeah, he phoned my mom, and I remember my mom's face when she saw me there with my arm just there. And yeah, that was her face. Like, that emotion sticks in my mind a lot, and how much she had to see, and how much, you know, she had gone through in the last 2 years, and how much I put on her, because it was always about fixing Max and making sure Max is okay, and it was never about my mom and how she felt, especially after my dad died. So eventually, yeah, they fixed up my arm. I stayed there for a week. A psychiatrist put me back on medication, because I had used the medication, but on and off and when I felt like it, and it wasn't really working as well as the drugs. So yeah, and I didn't really want to go on medication because I knew that it didn't work, but I just let her do it anyway. Yeah, so I didn't get really like a lot of visitors in that week, and I was very self-piteous about it. But looking back now, like, I had lost all my friends, all of my relationships, because I just ended up being with Tyler only and at work. So that psychiatrist had said to me that I had clinically overdosed on my drug of choice. I don't even know if that's true, but the charts looked like it was true. So, yeah, she had suggested that I go to a rehab for 28 days. And I thought, 28 days, that's amazing. Like, just, you know, a little holiday and get the heat off me. And, you know, it's nice in like a cold area. And I love the Berg, so let's go. And then my mom came to me and she said, yeah, no, you're going somewhere else for 3 months. And I lost my shit. I was like, 3 months, that's my whole life. So I didn't go in there willingly, and I was not happy about it. And yeah, the day that we were driving up there, I remember thinking about, if they say one word about God, I'm going to absolutely lose my shit. And yeah, the next day they mentioned God, and I was like, oh no. So yeah, wasn't dressed appropriately when I got there. I had a see-through top on, so yay. And I remember seeing and like, I thought I was fine, but I had, you know, this like plastic like thing with like elastics going down, like helping my tendons, and I was in complete denial. Yeah, and I remember seeing this like metalhead looking guy, and I was like, okay, cool, there's someone like me, thank God. And then I met my buddy, and I thought, well, this place is just fucked. And she was telling me how all the counselors are addicts themselves, and I was like, well, it's just the blind leading the blind now. I have no hope. Sorry. And everybody was coming out of this thing called step work, and I was like, oh, I don't want to write, so like I came here to chill, and like there's a nice pool and pond that I want to sit next to, and you know, yeah. And people were just coming out of everywhere, and there were like a million people, and I was like, when is this going to end? And you know, I put on my tough metalhead face, and I was like, oh, I'm not scared of these people, like, you know, I can socialize, but inside, like, I am the least social person. I'm not a social butterfly at all, and I was scared. I was really, really scared of what was happening. But yeah, I still put up a fight. I was in denial of being an alcoholic, you know. I thought drugs were just the problem. It wasn't alcohol at all. And yeah, then started getting into groups and listening to people's story, and there was this really young guy. He was about 18, and you know, he would always ask me if I'm powerless and if my life was unmanageable, and shoving down this program down my throat. And I was like, what is this lighty talking about? Like, who the hell is he to talk to me like this? Like, he doesn't know anything. And yeah, like I didn't want to comply with the rules. I didn't really care. I was more like fixed on what am I looking like, and like, you know, what am I wearing, and my makeup, and my piercings, and my shaved head, and looking all metal and angry all the time. And I didn't care about step work. I took it as like an absolute joke. I didn't like my counselor. I thought she had no idea what she was talking about, and she's nothing like me. How is she going to understand anything? But yeah, I eventually got dullard and concerns. I got into a dishonest relationship, as I do. That is my pattern. And, you know, I obviously, you know, went in there manipulative and jealous, and how dare he speak to other people in the rehab. And at that time, I just finished my step 5, and Cass was asking me, are you sure you don't have any more secrets? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong. I'm not hiding anything. Like, little did I know that she already knew what was going on. And the next day, all I can imagine is Caleb going like, you and this latte. And I'm like, oh my God, he called me a latte. Who does he think he is? I'm not young. But yeah, that was a hectic day, but also one of the best days when I look back now, and I'm very grateful for that experience. And like I realize now that I put somebody's recovery in jeopardy, like I put my own and his. I was just thinking about myself and my needs. And yeah, that day, all of my masks, my makeup and my hair and my piercings, my relationship with my mom, communication band, leisure band, all of the bands under the sun, I got all of them. And I was not a happy chappy. I went down to the pond and like thought about throwing myself against the electric fence to kill myself. Eventually I was called into the office and played the self-pity card yet again. And yeah, then I started dealing with it and putting in the action after doing a mini step 4 and 5 again. And that's when I started getting vulnerable with my counselor and telling her what was actually going on for me. And I think then, you know, the willingness started kicking in, and yeah, I ended up staying there for 7 months, and it was the best 7 months of my life. Looking back now, the first 3 I was wasting everybody's time, but the rest of the time it was amazing. And yeah, like I've never laughed as much, I've never made as many, you know, amazing memories, and yeah, like I became like somewhat of an adult, brushing my teeth and showering, making my bed and handing in my linen and doing my own washing. Look at me go. And like I always had my mind set on like, okay, after this I'm moving back to Durban and everything's gonna be fine. And then my mom kind of said to me like, no, you're not moving back to Durban. And I was like, oh my God, I have to live in this town. Like, what do you even do here? And that ended up being the best decision of my life, moving to Scottsboro. You know, I found such amazing friendships here and support. But yeah, when I left treatment, I was discharged, and I wasn't going to move into my flat for 4 days, so I was going to go spend some time with my mom. And I ended up spending a whole 9 hours with her. We went camping bowling and we were having fun, and then she asked me, do I have to make amends to my brothers? And she loathes my brothers after my dad died and with the whole will and whatnot. And yeah, she lost her shit that I have to speak to people that, you know, she doesn't like. And, you know, my whole life we've always stirred that resentment pot together, and I know now that I can't do that with her anymore. You know, it's not good for me, and I'd rather lead by example with her, or try my best to, and not stir that resentment pot with her anymore. So yeah, I kind of sat there in silence, and I tried not to react, and it was incredibly hard to respond as well because my mom's bloody scary when she gets angry. But yeah, eventually she told me that I must go back to treatment, and she doesn't want me there. So after those 9 hours, I went back up to the house, bawling my eyes out, the drive back. And I remember that drive back was the first time that I told myself that I loved myself, and, you know, it's going to be okay, you know. And I just spoke to God the whole drive home. And yeah, it helped me a lot, and knowing that, you know, I'm going back to a place where I'm loved and accepted, and I can go back to, you know, where I can go and share what just happened to me with others. And it turns out apparently that whole day everybody just had a shitty day, so cool. Yeah, and then I moved into my flat, and it was really lonely the first few weeks. I was scared to, you know, put myself out there with the women, and it was suggested that I stay away from guys and stay out of a relationship for 3-5 years. It's good for me. But yeah, eventually, you know, I had to move on and find a new sponsor, and it was suggested that I asked Jenna, and I really didn't want to because she's nothing like me. And it turns out she's very much like me. And I'm grateful that, you know, that I took the suggestion. And I'm grateful that, you know, I have these two women that have helped me in my journey. And they're women that, you know, I aspire to be like. And, you know, I've never been much of a lady, but through them I'm kind of learning how to be one. So, yeah, putting myself out there was difficult, and, you know, I always felt like the burden of like asking women out for coffee, and eventually like I just had to put that aside and get out there. And yeah, I threw myself into the fellowship. I did 90-90 about 4 times and still am doing it. I threw myself into service with our sister fellowship doing H&I. And yeah, I love service. In the house, I was house leader, and I found that I'm very arrogant. So I'm trying not to do that with my service positions now. And yeah, I love being of service and going to share my message at, you know, rehabs elsewhere. And it's much easier there because there's like 20 people and I don't know them. But yeah, like what I found here in Scottsboro and with this program is what has, you know, I've fallen in love with this program over and over again. And, you know, I'm very grateful that I'm volunteering at the rehab that I went to. it always takes me back to the day that, you know, my mom dropped me off and telling me that this is my last chance. And now looking back, like, it's been a year since then, and I really didn't know that this would happen for me. I did not imagine this. When I saw shares happening at Karisaka and Blue Marlin, I did not think that I would be here. And I'm really grateful that I am. So I think I've been sharing for quite a while. But thank you for everybody in this room. You've all played a part of my recovery. I'm grateful for this program, and for the relationships that I've built in this fellowship. Today I can say that I have friends, and true friends that call me out and show me that they love me by doing that, and I'm really grateful for it. So thanks for letting me share.
Thanks.